Good evening. It is Monday, April 25th, 2022, 7 p.m. here at City Hall, City Council Chambers for the study session meeting for the month of April. Call the meeting to order and entertain a roll call. Carla.
Beaufort. Here. Bergen.
Here I am.
Rinko. Here. Kangas.
Present.
Myers. Here. Ruffy.
Present.
Schneider.
Here.
All accounted for. We'll move on to item C, Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Move on to item D, the approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion to do so.
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Schneider, second by Bergen. Council discussion, if any. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Want to welcome back our guest council member.
Thank you.
Wasn't part of the roll call there, so I did watch the first meeting and obviously missed the last one, which is okay. I understand things come up. So welcome back.
Thank you.
So, item E is a proclamation for National Preservation Month. Got the proclamation here in front of me. I'll recite for you. National Preservation Month. Whereas local historic preservation is an effective tool for revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as a people. And whereas May 2022 offers the opportunity to continue to celebrate 25 plus years of existence of the Waverly Historic Preservation Commission, which in 1996 was formed and certified under the provisions of Section 101C of the National Historic Preservation Act. And now therefore we, Mayor and City Council of the City of Waverly, Iowa, do hereby proclaim May 2022 as National Preservation Month and call upon the people of the City of Waverly to join their fellow citizens across the United States in recognizing and participating in this special observance. In witness thereof, I have hereunto subscribed my name, Adam P. Hoffman, Mayor, to the affixed this day, 25th day of April 2022. So we will observe National Preservation Month next month, and I've signed the proclamations. I look forward to hearing from the Historic Preservation Board in the future. So entertain a motion to approve the proclamation.
I'll move approval of the proclamation proclaiming May 2022 as National Preservation Month.
Second.
Motion by Bergen, second by Kangas. Council discussion, if any. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Section F, public comments for items not on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the council as a whole and not to any individual member. Any public comments this evening? Come forward.
Hello, I'm Karen Lehman on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you very much for the proclamation. You all got an invitation in front of you to our dedication event for the public art project that has been part of the bridge memorialization. So we hope that you'll be able to join us on Saturday, May 14 in South Riverside Park as we dedicate the stereoscope. We're going to have 3 historic preservation awards given to people for their homes, and that will be part of the program. And then we will dedicate the visionary sightseeing binoculars. And we did have a long discussion about who gets to look through them first. So we decided we would get those tickets that split in half. Everybody who's in attendance at the program gets a ticket. We'll draw from our green tickets and see who gets to look through it first and be the person who's going to probably show up in news media for doing that. And then following the program, Rebecca Hackman, the artist, will give some remarks about the making of the stereoscope and public art and her role in that. So this will all be in South Riverside Park unless we have inclement weather, and we did reserve the room over there if we had to come back for the program. But the dedication will definitely be on the spot. So we invite you all, and we thank you for your support.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public comments this evening? Seeing nobody rise, we'll move forward with Section G, the study session calendar. Item number 1 is all-in mentoring presentation. See, Mr. McKenzie has joined us this evening. Anybody else joining you today?
Yeah, Aaron Bird is here also.
All right.
Good evening. I appreciate the invitation to share some hard work that a group has been doing here in town. Again, I'm here representing All In Mentoring. We're currently the replacement, I guess, for Big Brothers Big Sisters. But a little bit of history. Waverly has had organized mentoring in town for over 30 years. Back in 1989, Big Brothers Big Sisters out of the Waterloo actually opened an office here in Waverly and started doing community-based matches where an adult would meet with a child out in the public. That went fairly well. And then in 1994, the Rotary group here in town brought an in-school mentoring program to town. It's called Roots. And Roger Wilcox was a new principal here in town, and he helped implement that with some help from the steering committee. That organization, best we can see, went for 4 or 5 years and then just kind of outgrew the ability to be volunteer-led and through the school system. So there was an effort to join that in with the community-based mentoring that Big Brothers Big Sisters were doing, and Big Brothers Big Sisters took over both in-school mentoring and community-based mentoring. Big Brothers Big Sisters was very progressive here in town. In 2019, they had over 75 matches in the community. About 50% of those were in the school. So again, the adult would meet with the child during school. About 45% were then community-based. And then for about 2 years, they had a program with CUNY Municipal where they would actually bus students onto the Heritage Way campus twice a month to meet with adults. And they had about 15 to 18 there. So that's kind of where the 75 came. Unfortunately, during the tail end of their tenure, they did run into some problems with leadership. There was quite a bit of turnover in their executive director role, and then we all started dealing with the pandemic and what that did to nonprofits as far as fundraising and those type of things. So Big Brothers and Big Sisters did disband in September, around August, September of 2020. Several of us that were on the Exchange Club were also a part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. A couple of us sat on a steering committee that was part of Bremer County for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So we kind of knew the possibility of the agency closing. So we quickly got together and started to put our heads together on what we could do to continue that, because again, we've all had a chance to see the benefits of an adult in an at-risk child's life. I've been doing it since the ROOT program started, so 25, 28 years, something like that. And some of the young folks that I was able to mentor still invite me to graduations, weddings, send me Christmas cards, those type of things. So they not only allowed me to be part of their lives, but I think we both impacted each other's lives to a great degree. Shortly after a few of us from Exchange Club had got together, we decided that we probably needed a little bit larger groups. We put together a 13-person steering committee, and for about 4 months, 5 months, we just brainstormed on different options that were out there. We tried to realign ourselves with another Big Brother, Big Sister chapter, but unfortunately, we're talking Mason City, Cedar Rapids, those type of things. And again, in the early parts of the pandemic, nobody wanted to take on any more fundraising burden. 2-3 months into our process, we did, the state of Iowa has a mentoring, it's called Mentor Iowa, and that's their role, is to help set up mentoring programs of some fashion with communities. And they directed us to a couple of communities about our size that had brought their mentoring program into the community, stood up their own. And over about a 2-month period, we figured out that, you know what, Funding support has always been in Waverly for Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Roots program. 75 match certainly said there was a need in the community for mentoring, and we were able to align ourselves with a couple other support groups to help us with insurance coverage and back office things like payroll and those type of things. So in March of 2021, the group got to a point they said we're ready to move forward. So we started to put all the pieces together, and with the help of Exchange Club being with some seed money and a couple of private donations in the community, we were able to start all-in mentoring at the end of June in 2021. We're a 501c3 organization, so we can accept tax donation or tax deferred donations. We have our own liability insurance, our own board of directors. We are modeling ourselves after the Mentor Iowa standards. We hope to be certified under their standards within about a year. And their standards were at least as much, if not greater, than what Big Brothers and Big Sisters was operating under. So we feel we're in a great spot to pick up the mentoring mantle and take it forward. And in October, we were able to hire our first part-time executive director, Corey Chamberlain, and she was able to start with us in December. We made our first match mid-January of this year, and as of this week, we have 14 active matches, at least one match in every elementary school, including St. Paul's and the Lead Center. And our focus is really on kids in that K through 6 grade period. Those tend to be the ones that will take the time to connect to an adult if they're given the chance. And at least the mentees that I've had, by the time they get into junior high, it's not so cool to have an adult come in to meet with you. They'd rather be with their friends and that type of thing during open periods. So a lot of kids will just kind of age themselves out of the program by middle school. Currently, our focus is on trying to recruit mentors. So that's why we were looking forward to this opportunity. Unfortunately, we do not have any trouble finding kids that are at risk that could use an adult, positive adult role model in their life. Through the school systems, through the counselors, through some of the programming there, the kids get funneled to us pretty easily. In the first 3 months that we actually were out kind of publicizing ourselves, we had 4 kids come into the program because parents just responded to some of our social media, went out to our website and enrolled their kids in there. We go out and do speaking engagements, and we usually collect 1 or 2 adults, but unfortunately 3 or 4 kids will come through the process. So adults is really where we're focused at now. So now we're about to the end of this school year, so we will stop making any matches here at the first of the month. We'll use the summer months to gear up and train our adults to be part of the program when we start up in the fall. We're also hoping by the end of this year or very early next year that we'll be in a position to start supporting community-based matches. There are just some adults that can't get away during the daytime, can't get to schools, that type of thing. So we want to help balance out the need by having some community-based matches. But again, that just takes a little more time and a little more effort. Meeting in the school is a little bit lower risk than having an adult meet with a child outside of a controlled environment. So we just want to make sure we have all the safety measures in place to support that. The other thing that we're doing as a nonprofit is looking for funding. We've been fortunate enough to have a grant from Bremer County Health Department that has supported us through the first 9 months. We're now in kind of that annual grant application process, so we hopefully have news in a month or 2 and a couple of 2 or 3 larger grants. But we know that about half of our budget will have to come through community donations and fundraising. So again, We would encourage everyone to give some thought to becoming part of the All-In Mentoring AIM program, again, either as an adult, and again, your commitment's only 30 minutes a week in the school-based system. You work with the teachers to find a time that works in the child's schedule. Corey would work with you to make sure that it meets with your schedule and that type of thing. What Corey does behind the scenes is once a person shows an interest in there, she meets with them, understands what their likes, dislikes are, those type of things, and then works very hard to find a child that has some of the same likes and dislikes. We also require our mentors to go through about an hour and a half of training that shares about our program, touches on some of the unfortunate things that happen in adult-child relationships so that they're aware if their child or the child they're matched with may have some of that in their background, at least understand where the child is at, I guess, and then again, just protect themselves so they don't put themselves in awkward situations, that type of thing. We ask the adults to go through a background check that includes the normal criminal, sexual abuse, background checks, those type of things. All of this we're doing by leveraging some very unique agencies that are out there. The background, Sterling is the company that we use for background checks, and they are really primarily in adult-child relationship type agencies that they do their background checks. We have a very robust software package called Innovative Mentoring, and it allows us to track the adults, the child, the interactions that they have, the fundraising that we do in kind of one package. And that has been a tremendous help because, again, Corey is just a part-time executive director, so having software to take care of some of the busy work has really helped her out. I have rambled on a lot. Any questions?
How does somebody apply if they are interested in being a mentor?
Good question. Allinmentoring.org is our website, and through that website you can find more information about our organization, and there is also a link there for adult or child to register. Again, it's a fairly, it's probably 45 questions that we'd asked, again, trying to get at your background. We asked for a couple references, those type of things. That puts you into our software system, that gets you on Corey's radar, and then we start that face-to-face interaction just to explain the program, get a good feel for the adult and the child on what their needs are, and go from there. So All-In Mentoring is the easiest way. Go to our website. Otherwise, yeah, I think folks know how to get a hold of me one way or another, so I'd be happy to visit with them.
Yeah, I just want to say I really applaud your efforts. I mean, I think Waverly, one of the things that makes Waverly a great community is the service clubs and the dedicated volunteers, and you all saw a gap that needed to be filled, and I know you've spent hours, countless hours putting it together, so I really appreciate it. I mean, there's so much data now about what early childhood maltreatment does to kids and the lifelong ramifications, and one thing that can interrupt that cycle is a trusting, safe relationship with an adult. So great job. And I will put in a plug that if you want to donate to the Exchange Club, we're having our fundraising golf tournament coming up, I believe, May 14th. So it supports all sorts of organizations that prevent child abuse. So people can register through the golf course. But great job.
Yeah, it's been a great journey. I mean, again, we started out with 3 of us that kind of said we need to do something, and that grew to 13. And over about 5 months, 9 of those original 13s chose to stay on and become our initial board of directors. So there's a lot of passion in those 9 people. 3 of them have been past Big Brothers Big Sister coordinators, so they know the process very well. 5 of us have been bigs. We know the value that an adult can bring to an at-risk child. And then we have some that are just some of that financial background and faith-based connections, those type of things. Again, we do appreciate being invited here. If other organizations would like to learn more about us, we'd be more than happy to come out to speak to civic groups, whatever. The more we share our message, the more folks know the value that we're adding to the community. And again, we have two purposes in doing our outreach: finding adults that are willing to enrich their lives by becoming part of an at-risk child's life for 30 minutes a week. And then again, financially, we just need to continue to tap into the generosity in the community. So,
One of the things that I grasped, Dan, from your presentation when you came to Kiwanis about a year ago or so was you're not trying to find dads or moms for kids, and that's not the intent at all. And that's one of the things that really stuck with me, that you're not trying to fill a void in somebody's family. You're really trying to remain outside of their family. As you know, there's people that do care and love these individuals, and that's what they're looking for. So.
yeah, we purposely do not set ourselves up to be tutors. I still don't understand the new math, so I would be no good as a tutor. And we know that the curriculum, that type of thing, is something that needs to be managed if you're going to spend some time with a child. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're there to be a friend, just somebody that they can feel comfortable being around it. And surprisingly, just allowing them to be kids. I mean, even if you're not in an at-risk family, there are so many pressures on kids now that they really don't get the opportunity to be kids as much as they need to be. And I find just allowing them to be kids and doing silly things, or allowing them to win at the game all the time,
I was just going to say that.
as invaluable as anything that we can do. So,
Yep. Thank you very much, sir.
you bet. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward to item number 2 is the Municipal Housing Commission update.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Loss, the Executive Director. I've been with Waverly Housing for almost 20 years now. I think you have a lot of our information on your computer screens. We do have 3 different housing projects, where the first one was built in 1970, the second one was built in 1980, and the newest one we finally completed just before the pandemic in 2020. So we've actually struggled a little bit to get that one going and filled and stuff, but I'm happy to announce that other than 1 2-bedroom, we're full, or will be within the next month or so. So it's a good thing. The first 2 projects are HUD projects. We're guaranteed by HUD a certain amount every month for every apartment. So we send in vouchers and get the money back from HUD to, you know, if this person's 30% only pays $250 and the rent is $500, then HUD gives us the $250 to bring us up, so we know our income and everything. The amount of rent changes on a year-to-year basis. HUD puts out a operating cost adjustment factor, which is basically a percentage. They set it up. This year, it's 3.2%. So the rents, you know, may increase $10, $12, $15. We review everybody on an annual basis on their anniversary date, unless they're at top rent. And we're supposed to avoid that. That's why we opened Red Cedar Place. Those are for people that still meet the income limits here in Bremer County, but make too much money to live in our subsidized housing. Bremer County has a very high median income of over $90,000. I'm trying to think. So an individual can live in one of our apartments if they make over $53,000. And a couple can live in one of our apartments if they make over $61,000. Well, if you take 30% of that, they're not going to fit into our subsidized units. So that's why we have Red Cedars, so they have a set rent. They sign a lease, it's a set rent. One bedrooms rent for $600 and the two bedrooms rent for $850, and they pay their own electricity. Everything in the building is electric, so depending on how many loads of clothes they wash and dry or how hot they want their apartment, it's up to them to decide how much electricity they want to spend. So it's been a good gap filler because we get regularly management and occupancy reviews on the Waverly Manor, which is our 3-story building, and they don't want anybody in that building that's at top rent. So it's been good that we can shift those people over to Red Cedar. So, and we have done that lately. We've got people coming in. So I'm glad to say we're getting full. We don't, because of COVID and stuff, we haven't done a lot of activities or anything lately. We're slowly starting back up with that. There's groups that play cards, they do bingo. We even have a coloring group now. We have to, people color for relaxation and just to keep their mind going and everything. So, and we're close to the library and to the churches. Right, if you don't know where we're right across from West Cedar Elementary School. Our board consists of Ron Stahlberg, who's been the board chairman for several years. He's been on, I can't tell you how many years he's been on the board. Kathy McClung, who was a former teacher at LSI. Doug Bowman, who used to work at Wartburg. Peggy Rothy, and Seth Engelbrecht, who's our newest member, who comes to us from First Bank. I believe you have financials in front of you for the 3 different units. I don't know if you have any questions about them. I'll thank Bill for putting this all together. If you had told me, I could have done it, but it just gives you, we are self-sufficient. We don't get any money through the city. Obviously, if we needed something, we could apply for grants or whatever. We'd have to learn how to write them, but, at this point, we've always lived with what we made, so we managed to do that quite well since we were able to build Red Cedar Place without a mortgage. We used excess funds that we were holding in the Waverly Manor to build that $2.3 million building. So I say the board has done a very good job managing the money, keeping up with the apartments and everything. We just try to provide them with a good place to live. I don't know if anybody has any questions. If you look at the financials, you'll see what we get for rent supplements for on a yearly basis. We have more people that pay less in rent at the Waverly Manor. That's why the supplement is higher than the one at the Waverly Homes. We just keep plugging along. We've been doing this for a long time. Hate to, as everybody else is, we're fighting with gas prices and, trying to keep personnel. And I have an excellent staff. There's 2 of us that work full-time, and then there's 4 part-time. So we try to keep them all busy. And I'll just make one last comment, and that's that I am retiring this year. I figured I turned 70, it's time to quit. And fortunately, the city is willing to help us with the search for the new whoever will take over my position. We're, there's a large learning curve. Things constantly change with HUD, as you understand, working with the government. You know how you know, this year they want it this way, well, next year they want it this way. So we just keep plugging along and trying to learn and do what we're supposed to do. Sometimes we're not always right, but then we get it straightened out. So, does anybody have questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Sure, no questions? All right, move on to item number 3. Chamber of Commerce and Main Street update. Mr. Tolliver.
Thank you. As always, I come with gifts. I'm passing around an event schedule right now for the 2022 year. And I did send out a copy of our dashboard to your email rather late, so does anybody need a hard copy? Because I do have some with me. Fantastic. Well then, let's begin. Mr. Mayor and council members, city staff, Ms. Sue, thank you for having me. Travis Tolliver, I'm the executive director for your Waverly Chamber of Commerce and Main Street program, and on behalf of the nearly 300 members and individual investors who make up the chamber, thank you for giving me some time to give you an update on what's going on with us. I bring greetings from our board chair, Chris Knutson, who unfortunately couldn't be here this evening but wanted to be, but wanted to thank you for your continued support of our organization. We really appreciate the partnership that we have with the city, and it's opportunities like this that help increase the betterment of our communication between our two organizations. Just to go through the dashboard real quick, I'm just going to highlight a few things. First of all, so far, we've logged 241 volunteer hours, which equates to a value of just over $8,000. We have 15 new members so far this year. We've retained 180 of our previous members. This is typical. We get memberships coming in throughout the year. Same thing along with our chamber champions, and we're on track to meet our engaged business visits goal this year of 100 businesses or more. The organization goals are set right now, but the board is undergoing a strategic planning, and so some of these may change as we get done with that process. But for now, the first thing on our priority list is to help prepare the businesses for the Bremer Bridge closure in 2023. We're looking at ways that we can be hosting educational programs and business opportunities for those folks to be able to handle their business during a shutdown like that. We also want to tell our organization's story better. The Chamber and Main Street programs sometimes take a back seat when it comes to things that happen in our community, and we want people to know more about the organization and what we do in the community. Also want to promote our community and historic downtown district as a destination in Northeast Iowa. We do this already with our tourism efforts, but looking at different ways that we can increase the number of visitors that come to Waverly so that we can all profit much more from that. And we also want to facilitate more strategic partnerships, trying to find industry-specific needs in the community that we can take a look at and create task forces and increase our volunteers and see where there's ways that we can fill in some gaps. And then finally, our quality of life efforts in the community. We do this obviously through our 23 community events that we hold every year, but also seeing if there's ways that we can enhance those events, create more events that would help increase those efforts. I know that we've been talking with the Human Equity and Diversity Commission on helping them with their community events, and so we just try to find more strategic partnerships like that to better Waverly. Our Business Development Committee, I'll just highlight two things here. We decided to partner with the Rotary Club to host our Learn Over Lunch series. So that program kicked off on February 2nd. We had our guest speakers were the business students from Waverly Shell Rock High School. So the coffee shop students and the manufacturing students got to do presentations, and it was well received. So we continue on with that partnership with them on June 1st, August 17th, and November 2nd. And also, too, every last Thursday of the month, we've been hosting Chamber Happy Hour. This is just a very informal event where members can come, grab a drink at a particular watering hole, and just network and talk with one another. And it's been very successful. So coming up this week, we will be at the OP. And so if anybody wants to come out and join us, you are more than welcome to do so. With the design beautification, these goals are somewhat similar to last year, and a lot of them are being in progress or being met, and a lot of this is working with city staff to complete a lot of the plantings and the decorations around town, and looking at ways that we can improve facades in our facade improvement program, and of course assisting with the Art Walk event coming up in May. Our membership marketing committee has a slew of new goals that they want to achieve. Right now, we're trying to rebuild this committee, so a lot of this has been kind of stalled right now. But we want to increase membership visits to new and existing businesses through our volunteers, instead of just myself going out and doing this on behalf of the organization. We also want to bring back and bring awareness to hashtag Waverly First campaign, which is our Shop Local campaign. We want to try to beef that up so that people understand how important it is to shop local in our community. We want to create an investor map and launch that map online so that you can see on our website where chamber members are located, where Main Street businesses are located, and how the two intermingle. And then we want to also, as we usually do every year, review and enhance our membership levels and benefit packages. Retail Promotions Committee has been hard at work already, working on events for the 2022 year. And so you'll see there Ladies Night Out, Spring Retail Event, Ridiculous Days, Fall Retail Event, and our holiday open houses are all set and ready to go. We've got subcommittees for each of these events, and retailers are working hard on creating wonderful new ideas and things to make these events attractive to folks to come and shop in our community. And then, of course, always taking a look back at the years past and seeing what worked, what didn't work, and how we can change things up to better in the future. And then, of course, in tourism, so far we've handed out 12 welcome packets through our office, 315 visitors guides or brochures, and we're starting to work with our print advertising for this year. We've also started working, we signed our contracts again already with KOA and Iowa Public Radio, and then, of course, come towards the end of the year, we'll be working on getting Santa's house ready for Santa to be coming. So, as I mentioned before, Chamber Happy Hour every last Thursday of the month. Invite you to come to that. We also had our annual award celebration at the end of March. Thank you to city council members and staff that attended that. We had just over 100 people show up to that event, and we were able to give away 5 wonderful awards to 3 businesses and 2 individuals in our community and lifted them up. We also had a very successful Ladies Night Out last week, so hopefully some of you got to go around and shop and enjoy that. We had, on top of all the businesses that were participating in that event, we had 14 at-home businesses in our vendor location, which was phenomenal. And so it was great. They come from all around the region. We did have one young lady who's doing a pop-up bookshop in preparation for possibly opening up her own bookshop soon here in town. So it was really great to see a lot of those people being supported by the community that night, and how much fun everybody was having. Just a reminder about Art Walk coming up on May 7th, working with Garrett and the Art Walk Committee on that. Things are really looking forward to that. We're just hoping for really great weather, no wind this year, so we put it in order for that, right, Garrett? Good. So we're gearing up for that. And then, of course, looking even further ahead, concerts in Coleman every Thursday night in Coleman Park in June and July. Also just want to make mention too that we have not yet wrapped up our city council series on our webisode, Common Grounds, Comments Over Coffee. So I still need to interview you, and you. So I will get those scheduled as soon as we can, but we think that's very important for our city to have access and an understanding of those who are in leadership in our community. So thank you for participating in that. And beyond that, I think that's what I have to share. Is there any questions that I can answer for you at this time? Wow, I said it all? That's a first.
Check the boxes.
All right.
That's what the goal is, so.
Great.
We know where to find you.
Yes, you do. Just right across the street.
That's right.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Move forward to item number 4, residential parking discussion. Chief Purcell.
All right, Mayor and Council, thank you. Chief Purcell, as the mayor mentioned.
About 2 months ago, issues with residential parking, mainly at that meeting, was brought up in reference to the area around the high school. And there were some suggestions that were offered that night just through the normal study session discussion. And city staff was tasked with bringing back some suggestions or solutions. One of the problems that we had is that we were having a difficult time finding a solution that fit all the issues. And one of the suggestions was increasing the area of the 2-hour parking in that particular district. And our concern with increasing the 2-hour parking is that it would just extend and push out the problem. We had heard that there may have been an issue with enforcement by law enforcement, and so over the last 2 months we've aggressively looked after that, and we have issued over 100 citations in that area. I don't know if anyone's got complaints, but there has not been, in my view, much difference. It looks the same. So I don't believe that enforcement is going to cure the problem. And the other suggestion was the no parking on one side. I believe that would help with congestion. That would clear the path, especially for the buses. But it wouldn't address the other issues because I think you immediately take away 50% of parking. You then are probably going to remove the 2-hour parking restriction. And then I think you're going to lock up the other side of that street throughout the entire day, because now they don't have to move, because you're not going to have no parking on one side plus a 2-hour parking on the other side. And so, again, you're going to extend and push out the problem. So came across another option was a residential permit program. That's what we presented here tonight. And I say as we as me, so. So when I read through the goals of what the residential parking permit program is, are going to be the same goals of any program or any solution that we do, because what we're trying to fix and what the goals are in this program is what everybody's trying to fix, which is reduce the traffic congestion resulting from the use of streets within the residential district from vehicles that are parked from non-residences, to protect the residents from excessive noise, refuse, which was one of the major concerns, and preserve the characteristics of the neighborhood. So any solution that we bring forward, whether it's extending the 2-hour parking, no parking on one side, or this program, I'm sure it's to meet those same goals. And really it's just trying to decide what is the best citywide, those particular areas. And I just thought this was a very unique program that I felt at least addressed all the concerns that the neighbors brought forward. Will there be other issues? Possibly. And I kind of looked at it as, we have a choice. Do we place more restrictions within the neighborhood, or do we flip it, allow the neighbors to have access to their neighborhood and restrict the folks that are the residences? So if you want to ask questions about the program, that's fine, but I think maybe tonight should be more about the concept. We can get into the percentages and it takes 60% of the neighborhood to want to do it and those type of things, but I think maybe tonight's just more about, conceptually, is it something we want to look at, and then we can maybe work on it later, or we can just say, no, we want to leave it as is. I thought it was very interesting. I added it to my staff summary from a letter that we did in 2006, and we interviewed and surveyed everybody that lived within the 2-hour restrictions. And back then, this was Paul Leisinger and Jerry Greenlee that walked the neighborhoods, and that the question of keeping the 2-hour parking, 65% wanted it and 30% did not want it, and to remove the ordinance altogether, 71% didn't want that. They need something. And the question also was raised, and I forgot we asked this question in the survey, is you want to amend to provide a parking permit for residences only, and it was split 50-50. So that was pretty interesting. And at the time, I didn't suggest a residential parking permit at the time. One, because the neighborhood was split, and two, we didn't have any criteria. I mean, there was no true program. Our concern was, well then, yeah, this neighborhood's going to want it too, is I only want to be able to park in front of my house. I don't want anybody else to park in my neighborhood. And so how do you control that? And it really wasn't until we came across this program where it would take the majority of a neighborhood to say we want in it. It would take the majority of the neighborhood to say we want to remove our neighborhood from it. And it does really, when you get into the ordinance, it's pretty restrictive. And I think it's fair to say that when you look at Sunset specifically, that's the type of street that we're looking at, not just any residential area. So again, I'll answer any questions you have or throw it out to your guys for discussion.
Well, Chief, what do you see as the pros and cons? If we went to this program and, like you said, the neighborhood needs to decide that they want it,
Yep.
What do you think are the pros and cons of using it? And have you talked to any communities that did it and found it to be successful?
So when I was one of the other things that we did, James and I met with Ed, superintendent of W.C.R. School District, and trying to work with them as well. And they're on board as much as I know that Heidi's here. They want to help as much as possible. There is no entity that doesn't want to be good neighbors. I mean, and that's nice to have. But it is difficult to control, everybody that visits your facility or attends there. And one of the things that I talked about the very first night was that their school book policy was that they needed to park within the parking, and they needed to get a permit to do that, and they could enforce that. So I was looking for that case law, and I remember it was University of Dubuque case law. I didn't remember it was 1971 case law, but I eventually found it. But when I was at the University of Dubuque's website, they mentioned to a reminder to the students, be careful which streets you park in near and around the campus, as some of them are residential only, and you can receive a ticket from the city of Dubuque. That's where this came from. And I think that's what they eventually went to. Wartburg does a really good job maintaining and controlling their students and parking, and we don't have, I'm sure there's pockets there, but they do a really good job, their security up there, ensuring that the students park within the lots that they're assigned. And so it has seemed to work well on the surface at Dubuque, but I have not talked to the neighbors, I haven't dug real deep into that. One of the concerns I have is that when we issue parking tickets, we have gone back after issuing the tickets for 2-hour parking. We've gone back and there's been enough spaces to accommodate the tickets that we wrote. However, I don't know that there'd be enough spaces for all the vehicles that would have been parked in that area. So that is a concern. If we do this, is where, especially at the high school, where everybody will park. And, so then the suggestion is, do you leave 4th Avenue and 16th alone, because they're right next to the school and they could have visitors, and that would maybe relieve some. But that would be my major concern around the high school, is that if you put everybody in, I don't think there's enough room.
I think the biggest concern was on those smaller streets, that it's not okay for people to be parking on both sides, and it's just so congested, especially right around the corners there. So I think that in those smaller streets is the biggest concern, and leaving 16th and 4th probably would be okay, just because of the wider streets. So I think that's it's a very good option. And some of the people that I've spoken to, I haven't spoken to everybody, but of course, we got some emails that were liked this idea, and I spoke to a few neighbors, not everybody, like I said, but, and they seemed open to this type of parking as well. So something to help just relieve some of that congestion there. So I think so far this looks like a good plan. I think there were some concerns about, oh, well, am I going to be charged to be able to park in my area now? Am I going to have to pay money just to park in front of my house? So there were some questions about that.
Yep.
But
Yeah, and like I said, that's kind of what, and I think the thought behind reading the ordinance, again, this is not our ordinance at this point, so was that it was a voluntary program for neighborhoods. So then, since you're voluntarily going into it, there are some administrative costs that will be associated with doing that. And this council could decide it's something they don't want to do either, so, yeah.
I suppose what I like the most about this program is that it is citizen-driven, that they have to apply to become one of these, parking districts, where they have to, for the district. So they, in essence, have to request it. It's not like we're the ones who are setting the rules as much as they're asking us to enforce rules for them.
And then council always has full discretion at the end. They could say, like 4th Avenue may be a great example of saying it just doesn't, it meets the criteria set out in the ordinance, but we know based on visitation and visitors, we don't want to do that on 4th Avenue. And so you wouldn't have to do it in a particular area as well.
So it seems like reading this that this is, the classic examples are kind of near the high school or near the hospital. This would basically be a restriction on daytime parking.
Right. And and that's what I liked about it, is you would set up by districts. Right. And so I gave 2 examples within the ordinance, and so District A, for example, would be around the high school, and it would be specific to school hours, the certain months, and then the rest of the time would be lifted. And then you could do the same thing around other areas, call it District B, and then you could have it during the peak hours, and then it'd be lifted.
So this is specifically for residential parking.
Yes.
I know one of the other areas where parking has been discussed recently is the 24-hour parking for the apartments downtown, where there were some apartments where they don't necessarily have parking associated with the building. Maybe they want to be able to park in those city lots 24 hours. Could this be adjusted to accommodate those sort of residents? Is there a way to tweak this to bring to answer those questions? Or is that just totally different?
To the city, because we do have designated slots or spots in city lots right now, where that might be a better spot for that.
Okay.
But
to have a separate parking lot ordinance itself versus residential street like this.
Yeah, I think we did have that proposal that came up last summer, and it was rejected by the council to permit that. But I have some concerns, and I appreciate all of the hard work that you've done, because we asked you to come up with a proposal, and you made a wonderful proposal. But first of all, I got to look at what is the city's interest here, and I think our overriding interest is safety. And I think that's the lodestar that we need to look at is are these streets safe with the parking that's currently on them, and how do we make those streets safer if that's an issue? And I think from the testimony that we've heard and my own observations is that these streets are not safe with cars parked on both sides. So the issue that we need to look at is what can we do as a city to make these safer? One of the problems that I have with the proposal that this is neighborhood driven is that it's our responsibility as a city to say there is an issue in this neighborhood and we need to take care of it, and not throw that on the shoulders of the neighbors to say, well, we want to propose something here for parking. But that's really not my major issue. I'm just a little bit concerned about that we're abrogating our responsibility for these neighborhoods by telling the neighbors that it's their responsibility to do something about the parking. The thing that I have the biggest issue with a parking permit type of thing is that these are public streets. And I have a real issue about telling people that we're restricting parking on public streets to people that live in certain areas. If you live here, you get to park. If you don't live here, you don't get to park. I have a real fundamental fairness issue with that because I understand the safety issues that we need to make sure that these streets are kept clear, but I have a real issue of saying, well, we're going to do that by only allowing certain people to park on the street. And I have a problem with that. The other problem I have is one that you've already mentioned, is that if we do not allow non-residents to park on the streets and there's not enough room for them in the designated parking lots, where are these people going to go? And I don't know. Do they, I don't know. I don't think there is a solution. There isn't an answer to that. So, maybe the solution would be to have some of these places build more parking lots. That's probably the ideal solution. But I'll tell you right now, for my business, for example, we rely entirely on city street parking. And if that were taken away from us, I don't know where our people would go, because there are no city parking lots around. And we certainly can't afford to buy a lot for to parking for our employees. So, that troubles me a little bit, that fairness issue. My preference would be, and I think I told a couple of people this, that my preference would be to just not worry about the parking permit program and simply make parking one-side parking during the day and restrict parking on the other side between the hours when it's the most problematic. I mean, I drove through both the high school parking area, the high school residential area, and the hospital residential area tonight before I came to this meeting, and there were almost no cars parked there. So obviously the issue is during the day when school's in session and when hospital employees are crowded in there. So if parking were restricted during those areas to one side of the street, we'd at least be addressing the safety issue. So now we have only one side of the street where the cars are taken up. There might be still an enforcement issue, but I think it'd be really easy to enforce, because all you have to do is drive down the street and see that somebody's parked there. It's after 8 o'clock or after 9 o'clock, they're there illegally. And it concerns me about where those people are going to park if they can't park in those residential spaces. So I've got some real issues with the parking permit program, plus the fact that it really seems like it's bureaucracy run amok here. I mean, we're doing a lot of, you have to have a petition with a certain percentage of people that sign it, and then you have to have a study done to take a look at the parking areas. Then you have to give these notices, and then people have to come in. They got to apply for parking permits. I mean, it just seems like a huge bureaucracy, when a simple solution would just be to tell people that they can't park on one side of the street during the busy times of the day.
Yeah, and to me it seems thorough. So, and so that's the dilemma, because I don't disagree with the idea of you're saying through the permit process that this particular location of folks can park here, but others can't. But to me, I don't know that you're doing anything different when you're saying you can't park in front of your own home, and it's a public roadway as well. I mean, so I think it's just it's a flip of a coin of what you do, and I think you're going to run into the same problem is, because my guess is that no parking would stay within the same footprint of Sunset, Iowa, 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, probably push it out a little bit longer, a little bit farther.
Yeah, and so if you do residential in the exact same area, the overflow's got to go somewhere with either solution. And so we may find out, even with the no parking on one side, there isn't enough parking.
Sure. Well, I don't want to argue the points with you here, but one of the thoughts is, and I think one of the things that I think has been implied is that people are parking on the streets because they don't have to walk as far to get to the school entrance or employee entrance or whatever if they parked where they're supposed to park in the parking lots. Well, if that parking gets pushed out a couple more blocks, eventually those people are going to find out that they're better off parking in the parking lot than parking in the streets. So I think that might help the solution somewhat. The other thing about the fairness issue is that we're not prohibiting people who live in the area from parking in front of their homes. What we're saying is that everyone has a chance to park there. So if they're going to park on the street all day, that's fine. They can, if they live there, they park in front of their house, 48-hour parking, they don't have to move. But what we're saying is that anybody who is a member of the public can park in a public street or public area and doesn't have to have permission from the city to be able to park there. So it's not restricting them. I don't think it's restricting.
Well, you're restricted 50% of the available parking.
You're cutting the parking down, but I don't think that during the day, when there's probably not a whole lot of residents that are parked out on the street anyway, and if they are, they still have half the street they can park on.
If they get there first.
Well, they will. They live there, so they're going to be there first.
My take is that people have rights. Everybody has rights, but sometimes safety has to trump a right just to make something safe. I talk to my students about that all the time. Like, residents have rights. They can get up and walk down the hallway without a gate belt on, but sometimes if they're fall risk, that I'm going to tell my students, you need to encourage them to put a gate belt on so they can walk down the hallway without falling, because it's safe. You tell them you don't want to break a hip, because they're a fall risk. And usually the residents or somebody's going to, whoever you're talking to is going to say, oh, okay, I want to be safe and I don't want to have any issues. So sometimes those safety, if you explain the safety issue, then people around the area or that it's closely affected will be like, okay, I'll be safe. I want my neighborhood to be safe. I want my kids to be safe. So sometimes that safety has to trump some of the rights. And yes, I should be able to park in front of my house anytime I want to because it's right in front of my house. It is a public street, though. Yeah. But either way would be fine for me. But I think that people will probably be a little more angry if they can't park right in front of their house sometimes, or ever. But I think the residential parking program, I know some people aren't going to want to go register and stuff, but it affects a small amount of people, and I think a lot of those people are probably willing to do whatever it takes, whether it's parking on one side of the street or a residential program, just to make this improve.
And Rod, who knows, because they may not want it. Because I know that Officer Holmeister came across on somebody on Sunday, lives at 4th in Iowa, can't remember which side of the street was, and said, we're 80 years old, we don't park in the street, and we don't want it. I mean, it's one, right?
That was my point, though, shouldn't that be our decision as a council whether we think that there's a safety issue and we need to do something about it, or do we wait for the people in the neighborhood to come up with 70% signatures on a petition to say we want something? If it's not safe, we need to do something about it.
So then my thought is, if it's not safe, then it should be no parking on one side all the time. Because if you're going to lift the no parking on, and you allow it on both sides during events, then you're not saying that it's not safe during those times. So to me right now, if you go back to no parking or allow parking on both sides at night for events, then really this is all about trying to get the buses through. So then why aren't the buses going down 11th Street and skipping Sunset in Iowa? And then do we alleviate the whole thing? So if it's not safe, then it should be no parking all the time.
And frankly, I agree with you. I was just trying to find a way to compromise a little bit.
All right.
My preference would be to have one side parking.
Yeah.
And Chief, and I do that when I do drive a bus. I go down to 16th instead of coming down Sunset there because of that purpose, because I don't want to take the risk. I should be able to drive it down there because it's a public access street.
No, we didn't talk about this other district, by the hospital much, but you've seen the pictures. 8th Street right now is a residential street that has no parking on one side currently, and clearly there's concerns with that road as well. And so that's why I was trying to find a possibility of something that would kind of fix everything.
Yeah. And I know our original focus was the high school, but since it was communicated with us, and I know that there are individuals here that have joined us this evening, I just want to articulate that the communication that I got from the hospital today articulated that their construction will come to a close this fall. Not that it's going to, that we shouldn't look at doing something potentially, but just looking at the time frame, you implement a parking regulation or ordinance, it could be in place as soon as July, but then is it needed once the parking is available? So if we implemented a parking regulation that isn't needed long-term because it's been resolved by adding more parking, no differently than if we did something around the school and then there was additional parking built on, we would probably need to revisit it and say, is this really necessary anymore to the magnitude that you're doing it, because they've got parking there. So I just want to throw that out there, that we're not dismissing, I don't think anybody up here is dismissing the fact that there's an issue at the hospital right now, but I think it will be resolved as we get through the construction and the parking lot is there to offer those. So any other discussion points at this point?
The only thought I have, and this is like taking it to an extreme, is I've lived in places where they have these kind of residential parking permits, and I want to say you've got Zone E and Zone D and Zone F and Zone G, and if you're in this neighborhood, you're in one zone, you got this parking permit, but if you're 2 blocks over, you're in the wrong, and now you're getting a ticket. It would be nice if 2 neighborhoods were next to each other, they kind of could merge neighborhoods and not have kind of like, I don't like the idea of a lot of separate zones where everyone's kind of, just parking in their neighborhood. I would kind of prefer to have one residential parking permit for the entire town rather than breaking the town up into smaller zones. But again, we're not going to get to that point, not in the next 20 years. So.
Well, regardless of where this goes, and I can be persuaded anyway on this, so, but I would say that we need to eliminate the two-sided parking. That could be done quickly and probably should be, because even if we implement the program, you still would not have that on that side, double-sided, so that'd be my only input.
Yeah, I think it's just hard to change human behavior. I mean, you've ticketed 100 people and the parking situation doesn't change. So hopefully they're paying their parking tickets, but it's not changing behavior. And so, we get reminder emails sometimes with photos shaming people about their parking habits at the hospital. And I think some people respond to that, some people don't. They would, and there's a lot of reasons to not park on the property of the hospital or the high school. There's reasons people don't want to park on property, other than not having to walk. Yeah. But I do wonder, is the school, we talked about whether they should have a permit program and have assigned parking spots. Have they studied whether they have enough spots for their students who drive to school? Because the hospital is looking at expanding parking area, which hopefully will help alleviate a lot of the nearby street parking, but what about the high school?
I don't believe that they gave us a definite answer whether or not they believe they have enough. One of the encouraging things, they said they're looking at future numbers that they know over they are in a peak right now, and maybe in the next couple of years that there'll be about 75 students collectively shorter. That's about, and they are looking at trying to find different ways to encourage parking on there, but like you said, it's behavior. With students in the school, we know everybody's sending text messages as soon as the officers get out there and mark the tires, so they got 2 hours to get the text message around, they run out between classes, they move it 10 feet, and then that's it. I mean,
They're very resourceful. We just need to channel that into something.
I mean, you guys,
social behavior is awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Could I just clarify, partly for myself, but also maybe for the public that doesn't have this document in front of them? and correct me if I'm oversimplifying, so a neighborhood would decide that we want to have a parking district. So they would do a petition, they would put it before the city, and if the numbers all align, they would get a parking district. And then the residents within that parking district would be required to pay for a parking permit, and they could have up to 4 vehicles for each dwelling. Is that part correct?
Yes, I think so.
By the way, this one is
If we
written.
decide to make
This is
it
one possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has there been any discussion about what kind of cost that permit might be? Like, are we
I
talking?
think the example was $25 an annual or.
Okay,
and then-
so it's
but, I mean,
not going to be
again,
prohibitive.
No, again, it's, well, I mean, it could be $100 if you won 4 of them, so yeah, I mean,
Ends
so,
up.
And then the intention is that because only the residents who have the permits are able to park in that district, it will cut down on the number of cars there, cut down on the congestion, and increase the safety.
right.
So effectively, we're eliminating high school students or faculty from being able to park in those districts at all. And the hope being that the school has enough spots for them. Right.
Because, the reason why there's 2-hour parking there to begin with is because they're the non-use of the utilizing the parking. And then since that's not working, so that we're going to do a different restriction, and I just actually was trying to find a solution that instead of restrictions continually be put on a neighborhood, why not flip it and look for a way to say, all right, the neighborhood can park there, and,
So Chief, do you think they'll respond to that? I mean, let's say you decide you're going to park in a district, you don't live there, and you get a ticket, I mean, their behavior's not being changed by tickets now for violating 2-hour parking. And so, do you think people will actually not park there, or will they just say, I'm just going to pay it because I want to park here?
I think,
Or do you boot their car and tow them?
I won't tell you how many times our officers go out to do it. I think it is cumbersome.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. it
And quite
is.
honestly, there, interesting case law in other districts, it's illegal to mark tires in some other, because it's considered a Fifth Amendment violation by taking control of that property. I mean, so at some point, we're not going to be able to mark tires. Then you got to come up with other solutions, so yeah. But I would say so it's hard to get out there all the time.
Yeah.
And plus, they're not going to be able to move. They can go up there right away and issue a citation as opposed to having to wait 2 hours.
Yeah,
And they got
that's
time
true.
to move it
Yeah,
on their spot, so, yeah.
And you are assuming here that if there is residential parking by permit only, that will eliminate enough of the congestion, they'll take care of the safety issue? 'Cause I still keep coming back to the safety issue. I don't care if people can, I'd like people to be able to park in front of their houses, absolutely. But that is a secondary issue for me than the safety.
Right. I agree with you, because there probably are 2 different issues. The reason why congestion is such an issue on Sunset in Iowa, what was brought forward, was that the buses have a hard time getting through. So then the question is, you look at a roadway like 4th Avenue or 3rd Avenue by the hospital, well, then maybe congestion by itself isn't a safety concern to the same degree that Sunset is, but then, so the city wouldn't put no parking on one side because it's not needed because residences can drive through there. But then this program could be there to say, look, our neighborhood's locked up, and so it might be 2 things. You may want to go move forward with something in the high school area for safety, and then maybe still look at a residential program that meets just areas that it's just bottleneck with parking issues. So maybe that's why there's that little thought you have, because safety is an issue, running buses up and down Sunset.
Running just your regular car, like I have a truck and then I have my tiny little blue car, this little 2-door car. And that's the only vehicle you can get up and down. It's so tiny that you can get up and down those streets. I mean, I can drive my truck down there, but I'm literally going a couple miles per hour. I'm terrified I'm gonna hit a car. Somebody's gonna open a door, a kid's gonna jump out at me, something like that. And just in my regular car, not just a bus. So on those streets anyway.
And if the residential parking relieves enough, then you may have the space, but then that's my question is if you're going to go to no parking on one side, then it probably should be full-time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think looking at it, dividing it into two issues like that is the way to go. And I think just getting feedback from citizens about what do they think about an option like this, and how it's written is not word for word how we would necessarily adopt it, whether, we could decide whether people would have to pay or not, right? But I think we should get feedback about something like this, but also look separately at whether to just take away one side of the street. And I agree with you. It's not like you should then implement it at night for football games, because it's not necessarily safe. It's less safe at night, so. But I appreciate your efforts. It was very thorough.
All right. Thank you very much.
So is this going to come back up at a future time, or how should we handle it?
It's up to you.
It's up to the council. I'll entertain any communication, individually on how you want to go, and James can as well.
Well, if there's a ordinance that's proposed, at least we'll have a public hearing, and people will have 3 shots at having the public come in and give us their opinions.
Sounds good. I do appreciate all the communication that we did receive from this. So I know that there was a lot of effort, especially from Mr. Barnes, who joins us this evening, and a lot of thought and time put behind that. And it doesn't go dismissed at all by me anyway. So thank you. Moving forward to Section H, reports from boards and commissions. Item number 1 is Human Equity and Diversity Commission minutes from February 8th of 2022. Item 2 is Human Equity and Diversity Commission minutes of March 8th of 2022. Item 3 is the Library Board of Trustee minutes of March 8th of 2022. And item 4 is Airport Commission minutes of March 10th, 2022, all received into the record. Move forward into Section I, staff updates.
I think we have a brief one tonight, sir.
Perfect, thank you.
Just a last reminder that MSA will be in town on Wednesday, 6 o'clock here at the Civic Center. They'll be here from 6 until 8. So everyone who can should come out and kind of give your ideas for the comprehensive plan, park and open space plan, bike trail, pedestrian, all that good stuff. So 6 to 8, Wednesday night. Thank you.
Yes, especially if you've had any issues with completing the online survey, this is a great time to do your interaction face-to-face.
Mayor, we're also trying to emphasize that it really isn't, you don't have to be there for the whole time.
Right,
So it's a
drop in.
Yeah, drop in from time to time. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Cedar Lane, next Monday. Weather permitting, contractor showing up. Construction will start on the northwest end, so I'll probably make the mistake, go half a dozen times before I learn I gotta turn south rather than head north. So stage 1 will begin on Monday, and we'll provide regular updates as construction progresses.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
That's all we have tonight, sir.
All right. Move forward with city council comments. Mr. Bergen.
Well, I was going to mention the MSA listening post again, but that's already been done. So anyone wants to join me for a beer, I will be at the poorhouse after the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bowman.
No comments tonight.
Dr. Rafferty.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Ms. Myers.
Nothing for me.
Mr. Schneider. Mr. Drenko.
Well, beat a dead horse, the MSA listening post on Wednesday night, get as many people there as we possibly can.
There you go. Guest council, Ms. Sue.
No comment.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you for inviting me, and this has been a learning experience that I've enjoyed it.
Good. Relatively painless?
Relatively painless.
All right. All right. All right. Thank you. Mr. Kangas.
I don't have anything tonight, Mr. Mayor.
All right. One message I had from the crossing guard in the 16th and West Bremer is please be courteous of the students crossing in the morning. There's been at least one close call there, so make sure you're stopping prior to the intersection, not prior to just the crosswalk, but prior to the intersection when they're in there. very close call last week. I don't know if your office was made aware of it or not, but that's the last thing we need in our community. So just be patient, especially in those morning and afternoon commutes. Be cognizant that the afternoon on Wednesdays is an hour earlier and plan accordingly. Other than that, I have nothing further. I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Kangas, second by Rothi. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.